Welcome to week 6 of Dr. Stone Weekly, the show about people being in a stone world where they try to revive each other and /or kill each other. We skipped week 5, so we've moved straight on to week 6. Last week in week 5, we kind of had a weird, retrospective episode, which reminded me probably the most of episode 7 of Gurren Lagann. If you know anything about that episode, you know a little bit about what this episode was about. So we had Senku almost immediately at the very beginning of the episode get struck in the neck. And then the whole rest of the episode was about them trying to save him. And we also went into this kind of flashback which showed Senku's first awakening, how his actual willpower is what helped him awaken from the whole petrification thing. And he counted some 117 million seconds that he was under and took him a bunch of math to figure out that it's been 3,718 years since he went under. And then he woke up in the spring because that's the best time to wake up. It's not too cold, you can prepare stuff, there are plants blooming and all that. He got all his stuff ready, took him 6 months, and he put the fear of humans back into the monkeys. I think that's the most important part of what he did. Thank you, Senku, for your, humble sacrifice for, keeping the monkeys afraid of us. Otherwise, it'd be Rise of the Planet of the Apes all over again. So we have Senku to thank for that. That we're not watching a different show about apes in the apocalypse right now. So then he wakes up, he's struck, and at the very end of the episode, they find a little bit of petrification right at the back of his neck. And that whole time they show clips of him basically urging Tsukasa to hit him in the neck with that David Blaine, acts of suggestion. And it eventually ended up working because he got struck in the cervical nerve at the back of his neck. And apparently he was supposed to be dead. They put that petrification liquid on him, and we'll see what happens in episode 6. So without further ado, let's get started. So this is what I've been asking from the very beginning. Why did it only target humans and birds? Is it because humans and birds are the only ones with 4-chambered hearts or something? This is me getting way too scientific on an anime show for little baby kids that I'm watching anyway. But the point is, this is where the show is at its best to me, when we're trying to figure out scientific things or rules and psychological battle type deals, is where the show's at its best. And when the show's at its worst is when we're stuck with Taiju and we have to deal with his romantic inflections and basic high school drama type stuff. I would much rather prefer we just, rode with Senku as the main character the whole time. But he's currently either paralyzed or recovering from paralysis in some future timeline while we're in the past trying to figure out what all he learned in the, when he did wake up 6 months ago. Senku's pretty smart already, so if you give him a 6-month head start over everyone else to do what he needs to do, we know he's going to figure out some stuff. I kind of wish the show had just started this way, to be honest. I feel like we could have, connected more with Senku if he was the only person left on the planet rather than, waking up with Taiju, who's kind of our everyman, perspective character, because it's really hard to connect with someone who's as knowledgeable and smart as Senku is. So we've been riding with Taiju this entire time, and that's fine. I don't really mind him, to be honest, but I would much rather have rode with Senku from the beginning because he was the one who woke up first. And that, to him, he's the real protagonist here. So if we were with him from, second one, I feel like we would have connected with him a lot more because now we just saw him, unearth Taiju. And for me, that sparked the first kind of connection that I've had to this character over 6 episodes. And this is probably going to be a 2-course show, so we're only 1/4 of the way in through its runtime. But still, if we're only for 1/4 of the way in, we still haven't gotten that kind of I actually care for this character and what happens to them kind of connection. I feel like it may be too late at this point, but, better late than never. We are getting it now at least. So thanks, Senku, for being an actual human and showing us your weaknesses. Please continue. I already love this. As a science boy, this is the best for me. I wish we got more of this when we were in the future timeline. Because he's working through it, he's problem solving, he's thinking of ways that it could have gone, and then sometimes he's wrong and sometimes he's right. That's, the trial and error process through which science is done. So I feel like we're really getting closer to him as a scientist in this, timeline in the past than we are in the present, where he just knows the answer to everything. He knows that ethanol is this and calcium carbonate, and he may have already planned that, and he already knew when I get people, I need to do these 3 things first, and he's just explaining to us. But when he's actually figuring it out himself and then explaining it to us, I really feel more connected to the character that way because it feels like, he's a real person. When he was sitting in that cave and he's thinking to himself and he's like, think, what is it? Oh, I was thinking And then he immediately goes into this whole explanation. I was like, okay, I can see you're working there. If you like just show me the answer without showing me any of the things along the way that got you there, it kind of feels cheap. It kind of feels like you just knew the whole time. And then we turn into like this Kirito-esque, like overpowered guy where he just has all the answers from the very beginning and he's just waiting for the right opportunity to pull them out. I don't think that's the way the show wants to go, and I don't think that's the way the show is going to go. But when we see this kind of insight into the character about like he learns through trial and error just like everyone else, this is the first time I felt connected to this character. Also, thank you for showing this picture of Albert Einstein. It's the best. Okay, continuing. We get the second mention of Dr. Stone, and the way he says it, it makes it sound like petrification was some kind of good thing to like reset the timer on humanity so we get to start all over again. I wonder if that's what they're going for with this. It's like, because of this petrification, literally reverting us to the Stone Age, get it? We're like starting all over from scratch and we can avoid the mistakes that we made before. But that doesn't seem to be Senku's plan. He seems to want to go exactly the same way because he wanted to be a scientist that sent rockets into space. That's his thing. So there's only one way to achieve that, which is through agriculture and large organization of, millions of people. Because without that, you can't, mobilize enough resources to reach something as extravagant as a rocket. So for him, it means like the chance to redo all of civilization's technology by himself. And for Tsukasa, it means like, this thing reset us to the Stone Age so we can avoid the mistakes we made before. So Senku's all about like redoing the same exact thing so we can get back to where we started. And Tsukasa is about, doing a different timeline so we can avoid the mistakes and go beyond where we started. Now, if you look at it in only an ideal or platonic sense, it looks like Tsukasa's right, be like, hey, why should we make the same mistakes again? But the way he wants to do that is the problem. It's never the end. It's always the means that they try to justify with the ends that make it bad. Pretty much every, large campaign that attempted to do something grand and ended up just killing a bunch of people started with noble ends, but the means they use to justify those ends is the problems. The ends justify the means, which in Senku's case, he doesn't believe in. He just wants to redo everything the same way and bring everyone back. That's all he wants, which is, probably the best means to any end. I just thought that was cool. They keep mentioning Dr. Stone, which is literally just a bar of soap for them in this world. But now you've seen that it relates to something else, which is that petrification is kind of like a purification force in the way that the soap was helping them, stay alive by cleaning them. This petrification beam, whatever it is, whether it was virus, aliens, other country, whatever, it reset everything and it's kind of helping them purify, humanity. I guess we're going to find out what it is at the end of everything, maybe. Probably like 3 or 4 seasons from now, because this show's been really successful so far. Let's keep going. Yes, it's been 2 episodes since we saw these smoke signals, and we've just been dealing with like Tsukasa trying to kill Senku this whole time. But obviously, if they did smoke signals, that means they were trying to signal them. So they have the technology and maybe like the know-how to be able to do that. Because if it was just random high school people, which it's going to be, but if it was just random high school people who had no knowledge of science, they wouldn't even have thought to use a smoke signal. They would have just like run towards it or something like that. So by showing the smoke signal, they've proven that they are capable of doing scientific things. So definitely it's worth having them on your side to begin with. And we get new characters, so why not? Run away, Senku. Oh shit, I already know the twist to this. She's been raised in this world. That's the answer. So she's too young to have known, studied martial arts previously in Japan. She's saying all kinds of weird stuff like sorcerer guy and like summon the mountain's wrath. Her and her people, whoever they are, were raised in this world by whoever, I don't know. I guess they must have died. Maybe they were killed by animals or something. That's an interesting twist to put on things. So you have science army, like nativist, revivalist, Tsukasa. And then you have like people who just only know this world as their only world, and they've come up with this technology themselves, which is actually really impressive if you think about it, because Senku's been able to do this in 6 months with the revival fluid and the stone tools and the houses and everything. They've been working on this for probably like 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is. It could be even longer than that. It could be a very long civilization. It's been 3,700 years, right? So imagine one person woke up like 1,000 years ago, and it's taken them 2,700 years to develop language and everything else. There are a lot of questions to ask about that, but I'm pretty sure that's what they're trying to go for here. Very interesting. Let's keep watching. Okay, so we've taken a very interesting twist. I probably should have seen this coming sooner, to be honest. I just assumed that since he was the first one to wake up, that he was just the first one to wake up. But obviously, people have woken up before him, and the amount of time that we've seen before, like we know that's been 3,700 years. Now, I don't know how long it took, humanity the first time around to figure out stone tools and everything, but I'm pretty sure it would take them the same amount of time this time, because we haven't really gotten smarter as a species or anything like that. Let's assume it's been like a couple generations since they woke up. They've been able to make clothes, stone tools, language. She had a shield on her back. They have some knowledge of deception because she came with the flower thing, but then she took out knives from underneath it. They have smoke signals, which means they have fire. And if they have fire, that means probably they have some kind of shelter also, because I'm assuming they're not hunter-gatherers at this point, because it's been a few generations. Very interesting twist. We're on episode 6, and I feel like the show's never been stronger. I would say this is one of those slow starty type shows, for me at least. I know for most people it's not going to be, because we immediately jump into the action with them going basically directly into the stone world. I'm assuming that covered, episode 1 covered chapter 1 of the manga, the longer chapter, and then we got, we introduced to Senku, we saw Taiju, we saw Yuzuriha. They don't rescue Yuzuriha in episode 1, but they basically jump directly into the action. But I feel like the show really didn't kick off until episode 4, when they finally confront Tsukasa and be like, hey, we need to get this gunpowder, because it means they're using science for some combative, reason, rather than just trying to build up society. Because building up society, you're stuck with this Age of Empires type feel, where you're just building up things for the sake of building them up. You don't really have any adversarial force. Or immediate adversarial threat. You have the vague threat of other civilizations going to attack you or whatever. But now we've seen that they need the gunpowder because Tsukasa is a crazy superhero guy. We also know that there are other people who are nativists, who have come from this land. They're primitive. They don't have any science. And then we have Senku, who's out here making gunpowder and crazy science inventions. What's better than 2 sides fighting is 3 sides fighting, because that means you can have all 3 of them be completely different from each other and still be, in the right in some places, in the wrong in some places. This has gotten very interesting. I'm super into the show now. And a lot of the things that I complained about at first have kind of grown on me. The music has gotten better. I still don't like the OP. I think the OP is kind of bad. Not the animation, just the music. The animation of the show itself can get kind of stale at points. But it is a dialogue-driven show, and I get what they're going for. It's fine. The backgrounds are much better now for me. I think I was just being a hater at the beginning. And in general, just the show's aesthetic and everything is perfectly fine with me. The character designs are a little bit, kind of bland, but other than that, they're pretty good. Tsukasa is probably the most interesting looking character we've seen so far. The art style of the characters just doesn't vibe with me. Maybe because the manga's kind of older, maybe that's why. But this is definitely in my wheelhouse of thinking and battling each other through the power of your brain. Like he said, the brain uses 400 kilocalories a day. So you better put that to good use, Senku. You don't really have much time to figure out how to defeat all these people. Great episode of a pretty good show so far. This season has kind of turned out to be kind of a disappointment for me. I recently made a tweet about how next season looks kind of crazy stacked, so we just have to make it through the season somehow. And if we're gonna have to watch this, I'm perfectly fine with doing that. So that was episode 6 of Dr. Stone. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you next week.